The sun over Napa Valley didn't just shine, it leaned on you. It was a physical weight, pressing the smell of dry earth and expensive grapes into the fabric of my work shirt. I stood on the edge of the staging platform, 40 feet above the manicured lawn, checking the load distribution on the main truss. Matias, we're drifting on the north quadrant. Marco's voice crackled in my earpiece. Wind is picking up. That canvas is catching air like a sail. I see it, I said, my voice low. I adjusted my footing on the aluminum beam. Slack the tension on line 4. I'm going to ratchet the cross brace. Give me 30 seconds. I pulled the heavy ratchet strap from my belt. Gravity was the only law that mattered up here. It didn't care about your bank account or your last name. If you cheated the math, things fell. If you respected the math, they stood. I secured the brace, feeling the vibration of the steel hum through my boots as the structure stabilized. The massive white tent, capable of holding 300 guests, stopped shuddering in the valley breeze. Solid, I said into the mic. Lock it down. I climbed down the scaffolding, moving with the deliberate slowness that kept you alive in this job. When my boots hit the grass, I unclipped my harness and walked toward the hydration station hidden behind a wall of fake ivy. I checked my phone. No signal. Just a blank screen where a confirmation from the bank should have been. The lien on my dad's farm was due in 3 weeks. This contract rigging the lights and sound for the wedding of the year was the only thing keeping the foreclosure notice in the drawer instead of on the front gate. I rubbed my thumb over the dark screen until the glass grew warm, then shoved the phone back into my pocket. I moved toward the edge of the rose garden to check the perimeter anchors. The air here smelled sweeter, heavy with the scent of heritage roses that had been forced into bloom for the occasion. That's when I heard the voice. It wasn't the happy chatter of the wedding party. It was low, tight, and vibrating with distress. I said no, Greg. The answer is no. I am not signing anything. I froze behind a trellis covered in jasmine. A woman stood near the stone fountain. She was striking sharp features, blonde hair pulled back in a severe, elegant knot, and a silk dress the color of champagne. Her posture was rigid, her shoulders pulled back as if she were facing a firing squad. That was Riley Allen, the bride's sister. I'd seen her photo on the call sheet. Blocking her path was a man in a linen suit that screamed leisure class. He angled his body to cut off her exit, his phone raised like a camera or a weapon. Riley's heel scraped backward on the loose gravel, searching for traction that wasn't there. Come on, Rye, the man Greg said, stepping into her personal space. You can't do this alone. It's pathetic. Everyone knows I dumped you. If you walk down that aisle solo, you're just confirming that you're impossible to love. The ice queen who couldn't keep a husband. I don't care what they think, Riley said. Her voice wavered, a hairline fracture in a pane of glass. Of course you do, he sneered, closing the distance. You're Riley Allen. Perception is your currency. If the board finds out you're spiraling again, that merger with K-Tech is dead. He tapped the screen of his phone. And I still have those emails, Rye. The ones where you vented about the chairman? One click, and they go to the trade press. CEO Riley Allen calls board of directors dinosaurs. That's the headline. I looked at Riley's hands. They were clenched at her sides, shaking. She was cornered, outgunned, and running out of ground. I didn't calculate the risk to my contract. I didn't think about my place on the org chart. I just moved. I stepped out from behind the trellis. I was 6'4", 230 pounds of muscle built from lifting steel beams. My shadow stretched long across the gravel path, falling over Greg like a thunderhead. Problem here? I asked. My voice was a low rumble, the sound of a heavy engine turning over. Greg jumped, spinning around so fast his scotch sloshed onto his expensive sleeve. He looked me up and down my dusty Red Wing boots, my grease-stained gray t-shirt, the heavy carabiners clipped to my belt. He sneered. Staff, he muttered. Walk away, pal. This is a private conversation. It's a public garden, I said, not moving. I shifted my weight, planting my feet. And the lady looks like she wants to be somewhere else. I looked at Riley. Ma'am, is this man bothering you? Riley looked at me. Her eyes were wide, a startling, terrified blue. For a second, she looked confused, trying to place me. Then, she looked at Greg. Then, at the guests starting to gather on the terrace above us. She needed an exit. She needed a shield. No, she said. Her voice suddenly projected, loud and clear. She took a step toward me, closing the gap between us. She reached out and grabbed my hand. Her fingers were ice cold, but her grip was desperate. He's not bothering me. He was just leaving. Weren't you, Greg? Greg stared at her hand in mine. He looked at the grease on my knuckles against her manicured skin. Who the hell is this? This is Matias, Riley said, lifting her chin. She read the name off the embroidery on my shirt, but she said it like she'd known it for years. My date. Greg laughed. A short, barking sound of disbelief. Your date? The roadie? You're joking, right? He's a specialist, she snapped, her voice sharpening to a razor edge. He builds things that last. Now, leave us alone. She squeezed my hand so hard her nails dug into my palm. I didn't pull away. I didn't correct her. I just stood there, a wall of silence and earth, staring Greg down until his smile faltered. Fine, Greg spat, adjusting his lapels. Enjoy the show, Rye. I'll be watching. And so will the board members. He turned and stormed off toward the open bar. Riley didn't let go. She stood there, trembling, staring at his retreating back. The adrenaline was dumping into her system now. You okay? I asked gently, keeping my voice low so only she could hear. She turned to me. The color was high in her cheeks. I am so sorry. I didn't. I panicked. He has leverage. He knows exactly where to hit. I gathered. I said, You want me to walk you to security? Ken heads up the team here. He's a good guy. No, she said quickly. She looked up at the terrace. Dozens of faces were turned our way. I can't go up there alone. Not now. He'll circle back. He'll humiliate me in front of my investors. He's trying to break me before the merger closes on Monday. She looked at me, desperation, warring with pride. Can you? Do you own a suit? A suit? I blinked. Ma'am, I have work boots and a clean flannel shirt in my truck. My suit is for funerals and bank loan meetings, and it's 300 miles away. That will have to do, she said, her mind visibly racing. Please, just for an hour. Just until the welcome dinner is over. If I walk in there alone, he wins. If I walk in there with you, I control the narrative. I'll pay you. Name your price. I looked at her. I saw a woman fighting a war on a battlefield she hadn't chosen, armed only with her reputation. I remembered the letter from the bank sitting on my dashboard. $10,000 would pay the interest. But looking at her shaking hands, I realized that wasn't why I was going to say yes. I knew what it felt like to be cornered by threats you couldn't lift with your hands. I don't want your money, I said. Keep your checkbook. But I'll walk you up there. She froze. You'll do it? For free? My shift is over, I said. And I'm hungry. If the dinner includes food, we're square. She let out a breath, her shoulders dropping an inch. The food is excellent. It's organic, locally sourced, tiny portions. I'll eat a lot of them, I said, offering a small smile. Give me 10 minutes to scrub up. I cleaned up in the side mirror of my truck, scrubbing grease off my forearms with a pumice paste. I changed into my clean dark denim jeans and the plaid flannel shirt I kept for the drive home. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a CEO's date. I looked like a Clydesdale trying to sneak into a dressage show. But I had promised. I walked back to the terrace. Riley was waiting for me by the entrance, hidden in the shadow of a cypress tree. She had fixed her makeup, smoothed her dress. She looked perfect. Armor on. You look. She trailed off, eyeing me, like a rigger who cleaned up in a parking lot. I supplied. Rugged, she corrected. We'll go with eccentric artist. Or maybe land conservationist. Just don't talk about cranes. I like cranes, I said dryly. They have integrity. Tonight, you like structure, she whispered as we stepped onto the patio. Just nod and smile. And don't let go of my hand. Whatever happens, you are the anchor. We walked into the lion's den. The welcome dinner was a sea of pastel dresses and conversations about the stock market. Waiters circulated with silver trays. I felt the eyes sliding over my boots, my flannel, the size of my shoulders. But Riley held my arm like I was a prize she'd won. She didn't hide me. She paraded me. Riley. A woman with a clipboard rushed over. We heard there was an incident in the garden? Just a misunderstanding, Riley said, her smile bright. Fascinating, the woman said. We moved through the crowd. I shook hands firm, brief grips. I felt Riley's tension in the way her fingers dug into my bicep every time Greg came into view. Greg was watching from the bar, talking to a group of older men in expensive suits. He's talking to the board members, Riley murmured. He's planting the seeds. She's unstable. She's dating the help. He knows exactly which buttons to push. Let him talk, I said. You're here. You're standing. You're holding the line. Just then, a waiter tripped. It happened in slow motion. He was carrying a tray loaded with glasses of Pinot Noir. His foot caught on the edge of a paver stone. The tray tipped. The red wave launched into the air, aiming straight for Riley's pristine, champagne-colored silk dress. I didn't think. I reacted. It was the same reflex that made me catch a swinging beam. I stepped in front of her, spinning my body to shield her. The wine hit my broad back, soaking into my flannel shirt. The tray clattered to the ground, shattering glass everywhere. But not a drop touched Riley. The crowd gasped. Silence rippled outward. I turned back to Riley. You okay? She stared at me, eyes wide. She reached out and touched my wet shirt. You ruined your shirt. Better me than the silk, I said, shrugging. Flannel washes. Silk holds a grudge. She let out a startled, short laugh. Greg pushed through the crowd, clapping slowly. Impressive reflexes, Lurch. But maybe stick to lifting boxes, yeah? I looked at him. I kept my hands in my pockets, fighting the urge to introduce his face to the pavement. I lift what matters, I said calmly, my voice carrying over the silence. And I protect what's valuable. Accidents happen. Riley looked at me. Something shifted in her face. The panic receded, replaced by a strange, soft wonder. Come on, she said, her voice fierce. She took my hand again, lacing her fingers through mine. Let's get you a towel. She led me away from the crowd, not toward the exit, but toward the family table at the head of the room. She sat me down next to her sister, Sarah. This is Matias, she told Sarah, loud enough for Greg to hear. He just saved my dress. And he's staying for dinner. Sarah grinned, looking from my wet shirt to Riley's face. Nice catch. Mom's gonna love him. For the rest of the dinner, I sat there. But mostly, I watched Riley. I watched her spine straighten. I watched her laugh, actually laugh, at a joke I made about the structural integrity of the wedding cake. Under the table, her hand found my knee. She squeezed it. Once, a silent, desperate thank you. I kept my hand on hers. I didn't move it. I just let the warmth of my palm seep into her cold fingers, anchoring her to the ground. The next day was the rehearsal. The forecast called for high winds later in the evening, threatening the reception tent I had rigged. I was back in my work clothes, a different flannel, canvas pants, hard hat checking the guidelines. Riley came down to the site at lunch. She looked out of place among the road cases, wearing a tailored pantsuit. She carried a paper bag. Turkey and Swiss, she said, handing it to me. No mayo, extra pickles. I asked Marco what you liked. Marco talks too much, I said, taking the sandwich. But he's right. Thank you. She sat on a heavy road case. Greg is furious. He thought I'd hide. Instead, the board members are actually intrigued. They think I'm branching out. Glad to help, I said. Are you okay? He sent the email, she said quietly. To the board. This morning. Screen caps of my diary. Private thoughts about the company direction. It makes me look ungrateful. Reckless. What are you going to do? I don't know, she admitted. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I have to make a speech at the reception tomorrow. If I look weak, they'll vote me out on Monday. You're not weak, I said. I stood up. I walked over to the main support pole of the tent. It was a massive steel beam, anchored deep into the ground. See this? I asked, slapping the metal. It holds 5 tons of tension. The wind is going to hit this tent tonight. It's going to scream and flap. But this pole, it isn't going anywhere. I looked at her. You're the pole, Riley? The rest the emails? Greg, that's just canvas flapping in the wind. Let it flap. She looked at the pole. Then she looked at me. How do you know I won't break? She whispered. I know stress loads, I said. And I've been watching you. You haven't cracked yet. You're titanium, Riley. She stood up and walked over to me. She was close, too close for a client. I could smell her perfume, jasmine and rain. Matias, she said. Thank you. She reached up and brushed a speck of dust from my shoulder. It was a domestic gesture, intimate and casual. It hit me harder than the wine had. I should get back to work, I said, my voice rough. Right, she said, stepping back. Work. The wedding night was chaos. A storm front moved in over the mountains just as the reception began, bringing wind gusts that whipped the tent flaps. My crew was on standby. I was backstage, watching the monitors, monitoring the wind speed gauges. Riley was out there. She was wearing a red dress tonight, bold and defiant. She walked to the microphone for her toast. The wind howled outside, shaking the canvas walls, but she stood steady. I turned up the volume on my headset monitor, and sometimes Riley was saying into the microphone, her voice steady. Love isn't about the grand gesture. It's about who stands next to you when the wind picks up. It's about who holds the line. She looked directly at the camera feed. She looked directly at me, standing in the shadows backstage. The crowd applauded. Then the power cut out. The storm had knocked the main grid. The tent plunged into absolute darkness. Screams of surprise rippled through the guests. I grabbed my flashlight. Marco, get the backup generator online. Now! I barked into the radio. I ran out onto the floor, my flashlight beam cutting through the blackness. I found Riley by the stage. Matias? She called out. I've got you, I said, moving to her side. Generator is kicking in. 10 seconds. Greg is here, she whispered, clutching my sleeve. He grabbed me when the lights went out. I scanned the dark. I saw a shadow moving toward us. You think you're so smart, Greg's voice slurred from the dark. You're ruined, Rye. The board knows. You're done. He lunged. I stepped in front of Riley. I caught his wrist as he reached for her. I applied pressure to the pressure point in his forearm, a trick I learned in a bar fight 10 years ago. Just enough physics to neutralize the threat. That's enough, I said. My voice was low, dangerous. You touch her again, and I won't be a consultant. I'll be a problem. The generator kicked in. The lights blazed to life, harsh and sudden. We were standing center stage. Me, gripping Greg's wrist. Riley, standing behind me. The entire wedding was watching. Greg looked at me, then at the crowd. He saw the board members frowning. He saw the bride looking furious. He tried to pull his hand away, but I held it for a second longer, letting everyone see who the aggressor was. Then I shoved him back. Leave, I said. Greg stumbled. He looked around the room, realized he had lost the audience, and turned to flee. Silence stretched in the tent. The wind beat against the canvas, but the structure held. Riley stepped out from behind me. She didn't look at the board members. She looked at me. Then she looked at the crowd. I apologize for the disruption, she said, her voice clear and strong. Security has been notified regarding Mr. Greg Miller. We are filing a police report for assault and harassment. He is being removed from the premises as we speak. She turned back to me. Her eyes were searching mine. You held the line, she whispered. I told you I would, I said. And I meant it. She reached for my hand. She didn't ask. She just took it. Are we still pretending? She asked softly. Because I don't want to anymore. I looked down at her. I don't pretend, I said. Not about the important things. She smiled. A small, tired, genuine thing. She squeezed my hand. Then, just stand with me. That's all I need. We stood there, hand in hand, while the room slowly returned to normal. I didn't kiss her. I didn't need to perform for anyone. Standing there, being her anchor in the middle of the storm, felt more real than any show we could have put on. Later, after the cake was cut, we sat on the stone wall overlooking the valley. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and clean. You saved me again, she said. She was wearing my flannel shirt over her red dress. It swallowed her whole. I promised I would, I said. She looked at me. The board chairman came up to me. He said he saw what happened. He said Greg's behavior was unacceptable and that my handling of the situation was decisive. He's voting to keep me. Good, I said. You earned it. So, she said, tracing the line of my jaw with her finger. The wedding is over. The contract is up. It is, I said. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. Reality was coming back. The farm, the debt, the distance between her world and mine. I started to stand. I should go. Marco needs help loading the truck. Wait, she said. She stood up. She reached into her clutch. I thought she was going to pull out a checkbook. I braced myself to refuse it again. Instead, she pulled out a business card and a heavy brass key. This is the key to the warehouse in Ballard, she said. The retrofit project I mentioned to my sister. I bought the building this morning. It needs a complete structural overhaul. I looked at the key. It caught the moonlight. I need a partner, she said. Not a fake boyfriend. A real partner. Someone who understands structure. Someone who can help me build something that lasts. I'm initiating a formal review of the current contractor. If you want the job, we'll do it clean scope, timeline, paperwork, and an advance on the retainer fee that might help with. She knew. She must have done her homework on me, just like she did on her company. She pressed the key into my hand. And, she added, her voice dropping to a whisper, stepping closer until her shoes touched my boots. I need someone to take me to dinner. Real dinner? No suits? No board members? Just us. When you're ready. I closed my hand over the key. It felt warm from her skin. I know a place, I said. Best tacos in the city. Plastic chairs. Paper plates. I love tacos, she said. I offered her my arm. Not as hired muscle. Not as a prop. As a man who had finally found something worth lifting. Let's go, I said. We walked toward my truck, leaving the lights and the noise behind us. We walked into the dark, but I wasn't worried. I knew where the weight lived, and I knew we could carry it together. The end. Closing thoughts. The core lesson. I learned that true strength isn't about never needing help. It's about knowing who to trust when the load gets too heavy. When you find someone who holds the line for you, who stands in the storm and refuses to let you fall, you build a foundation with them. Engagement. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.